Passion is intense feeling. To be in touch with our feelings gives us passion, and passion can show up in sex, it can show up in our work, it can show up in our zest for life, in our enthusiasm to be whatever we want to be and whatever we do. And that's what people are looking for today. If a job doesn't give them passion, they feel like, I want another job. And so people are changing jobs quite a bit. And part of that is their job becomes boring. We see in previous generations, boring didn't really matter to people that much because they didn't have that passion and they weren't missing that passion. But something has happened today, and particularly in the last 40, 50 years, but suddenly in the last year, at the end of 2012, a shift has taken place, and everybody on this planet is going to be moving in the direction of increasing dissatisfaction unless they can experience greater authenticity in their lives. Before, it was a smaller portion of society, a large, millions and millions of people, without a doubt, but it wasn't everybody. Now there's an alignment, and everybody on this planet is going to be feeling more and more, I want lasting passion, and I want it in my work, and I don't want to be repressed in my work. I don't want to be oppressed. Oppression is not going to be allowed. People are going to go, wait a second, I want to feel I'm making choices. I want to feel my authentic self is coming forth. I'm going to listen to my feelings, which, by the way, listening to your feelings can sometimes get you in a lot of trouble. They have to be balanced with the left brain and the right brain. We need to keep remembering that we're rational beings, and rationality, reasonableness, it preceded the waves of emotion and feeling that are going to be coming into our lives. And when we fall in love, we're just in a roller coaster of passion. And historically, that passion would go away, and we'd be left once again with the responsibilities of a marriage and children, and we would live our lives out and hopefully somewhat fulfilled, and some level of contentment and so forth. But today, people want more, because the more in touch we are, darn, I'm losing my voice. The more in touch we are with I probably should get some water, so I'm going to grab a little water here, and I'll be right back. Okay. Thank you for your patience. Which, by the way, happens to be an amazing phrase. You know, I started out today, women, which is when you're talking to a man and you find that the emotions you're expressing or the focus on relationship may begin to sound critical or tedious to him, rather than interpret that like he doesn't care, recognize that this is just challenging for him to try to follow where you're coming from, because it's different from him. And he's trying to make sense of it. And some of it makes sense and some of it doesn't, because it's emotional. Emotions don't always make sense. And if you see he's sort of getting bent out of shape, pause and say, I really, really appreciate your patience. I know this is challenging. I know it's hard to follow, but your listening is helping me to sort things out. And as I sort things out, I'm going to feel so much better. So thank you for your patience. Wow. What an amazing, that little tiny insight can save a marriage right there. Just that. Thank you for your patience. I know this is challenging. A woman would typically, if she didn't understand men were different, she would resist saying something like that, because she would think that, well, why should I thank you for your patience? If you care, this should be easy for you. You should want to do this. And certainly he wants to make you happy, but do we really have to do all this emotional stuff to be happy? I mean, does it have to have all that charge to it? Can't we just calm down, relax? That's what men have to learn not to say to her. That's what he needs to say to himself, which is, all right, now I need to calm down. I need to stay relaxed. But what we end up doing is telling her she needs to calm down and stay relaxed. That's not the message that will work today. So times have changed, and people want They want passion, and in a marriage, a major part of passion is sex. And it's, think about it. You can love a lot of people, but as soon as you have sex, it becomes something completely different. Sex is not as casual as we like it to mean or be sometimes. Some people would like it to be casual. Guys would like it to be casual. Hey, can't we just have sex and be friends? It's a much deeper connection that happens during sex. And for some people, not everybody, but for some people who are more in touch with their feelings and their authentic self, it is a much deeper, intimate experience. And maybe I'm being a little off there in saying that they're not in touch with their authentic self. It's people who are more in touch with their feeling self, and sex becomes a bigger deal. Then people are not as aware of their feeling self. They might be aware of their sensory self. They're more physical people. And so sex is not necessarily such an intimate experience for them as it is for someone who is more emotional and more in touch with their feeling self. So there's all kinds of different people in this world, and it's not my place to be judgmental. So I was sounding a little judgmental, so I needed to back off of that. Anyway, back to our theme, which is sex, love, and relationships. Sex has been something that brought us together, and once we were together, usually it would taper off and the passion would go away. It's happening today more and more that couples are together for about 5 years, and often around 3 years, they were feeling, like we really might get married or something, and then it starts to decline. And that's because after 3 years, there's a shift that takes place. The newness in a relationship goes away, so our brain stops making as much dopamine. Without dopamine, men's testosterone levels begin to drop, and testosterone is the hormone of desire. Also, testosterone in women is the hormone of desire. So that's a big shift that takes place in men when dopamine levels are dropping off. And dopamine is challenged today in our society. Even with this great awakening of being in touch with our feelings, most males, to various degrees, are challenged in the realm of dopamine. There are some women, but more so men. And that's why we have the epidemic of ADD, attention deficit disorder, or hyperactive attention deficit disorder, and OCD, compulsive disorder. These are all symptoms of inhibited dopamine function. So inhibited dopamine function means that our ability to sustain focus becomes less. Unless I'm saying new and different things, and this is not exciting, then you get bored and you want to change right away. You can't hold the attention. And so when a woman's talking, if it doesn't seem to be relevant to solving a problem that's required of him, it's hard for him to hold his attention. When sex is the same person again and again and again, there's no newness to it. It doesn't stimulate dopamine. And if you have inhibited dopamine function, then you notice a tremendous drop-off in the passion that used to be there. And you feel excessively bored, more so than in previous generations. You feel really bored, and you don't want to have sex with her. You want to have sex with somebody else, someone new and different. And a woman might feel, I don't want to be with this guy, I want to be with that guy. He's more exciting, more interesting to me. That's if she has inhibited dopamine function. Dopamine gives you pleasure and excitement and motivation. And when you're no longer motivated to be with your partner, your dopamine levels aren't being stimulated in that relationship. Usually the sex drive is dramatically lessened with that person. Not lessened for everybody, but for that person. And that is low, that person stimulates low dopamine, low testosterone gets produced, and so you have less passion. So this is a really important thing to know. We have now basically 1 out of 10 kids, 1 out of 10 boys, 1 out of 5 in some states, 1 out of 7 in other states, maybe in some cases only 1 out of 5, 1 out of 10, but that's a huge amount of boys that are exhibiting dramatic symptoms of inhibited dopamine function to such an extent that they're given the drug Ritalin, which is a methamphetamine, or like a methamphetamine. No real difference between Ritalin and Adderall. These are all drugs that help. You take the drug and it pumps up dopamine levels. So a child will be awake and interested in his work and so forth. And for a while it will help him, and after a while it doesn't. And that's been proven now. It's changed the brain. It's made the brain, which had a problem of inhibited dopamine function, it now becomes even more inhibited, so the drug doesn't even work unless he keeps higher and higher doses of it. And that then causes all kinds of weird side effects. This is such a travesty to give to kids, because kids don't even know what normal is. They're just learning about themselves and what it's like to be normal. And these drugs change the brain, so you don't even know what normal is. You don't even know what your baseline is. It's like, I don't take any stimulants now. I was doing it for a while, then I went off of it just to come back to, hey, just let life do it. And I'm not saying everybody needs to be that way, but that's my choice. A long time ago, I stopped taking any drugs that would alter my consciousness, although that was fun to do for me. It was nice to know there were other states of consciousness. But I really like mine. I don't want it altered by some substance. I want my life to alter my consciousness. I want to be able to, have good things happen and feel really good. And when bad things happen, don't feel good about that at all and let it go and move on to create new good things. It's let your consciousness be a reaction to your life and express who you are in your life. But, each to his own. And maybe next month I'll go back and drink a little coffee occasionally or something. It's, life has its pleasures. But anything that creates pleasure is a dopamine stimulator. And what's missing today is a healthy dopamine function. Now, why would that be? Well, the reason that is so is that if you overstimulate dopamine levels, then you get inhibited dopamine function. That's a simple concept that we all have to understand as a foundation. If you want to keep passion alive in your relationships, passion is directly linked to dopamine function. When couples are madly in love, passionately in love, they do brain scans. That's when I think of my partner all the time. I can't wait to get together. You touch them with the electricity. This is so exciting. When you're in that stage of relationship, they do brain scans and they see a certain part of the brain lights up with blood flow. And that part of the brain is the part of the brain where there are dopamine receptor sites. So there's a lot of dopamine function happening when you're in love and you're feeling that excitement and that passion. That same part of the brain lights up in the same way when you take cocaine. It's a drug high. It's a drug high. There is such a thing as a passionate, loving relationship that's not a drug high, but it's real. But there's always that place of imbalance where it's extreme. And whenever you have extreme stimulation, whether it be you fell in love with the wrong person, by the way, will create extreme stimulation. Falling in love with the right person doesn't necessarily produce for very long extreme stimulation. That's fantasy. See, if you fall in love with fantasy, it's like a drug. If you fall in love with a man who's not available for you or a woman who's not right for you, then it's fantasy and it stimulates huge amounts of dopamine. It's not reality. So it's some kind of fantasy. You go to these motivational workshops and they pump you up and you can have this and you can have this, and they show pictures and they walk around on stage like they've got their whole lives together and aren't they great, and you can have this and this and this, and look at this airplane, you have your own private airplane. Wouldn't you like to have your own private airplane? It would be fantastic. I just drive to my airplane, I hop in, I get it, I take off. It's so fantastic. I heard a guy give that talk once and he did have his own jet and so forth. And everybody's like, oh, yes, I want that. It's fantasy. How many people are ever going to have their own jet? And guess what? I used to have my own jet. I've flown around the world 18 times in my own private jet with a crew and a living room and a bedroom. And I would never have that again. Why would I have that? It's such a complete waste of money. It costs $30,000 to fly your own jet from Los Angeles to New York with your crew and just gas. This is absurd. It's ridiculous. What good could be done with that money as opposed to flying in an airplane with other people, sharing the gas? It's such a consumption. It's such a ridiculous state of being. And I was there. And to think that it was all like fantastic. It was fantastic on one level. Felt very luxurious. It always feels good to have more than other people. You feel like, oh, look at me. But now all my friends wanted to come on the plane with me. And now I was like the the social director. I was the scheduling. I couldn't just schedule my own flights because my friends would want to come at another time. And, oh, we're late. Can't we get there? You suddenly are running your own airlines. And then you've got your staff and somebody gets sick. You got to find somebody else and you hire somebody to do that. You know, it's just another huge headache. I'm so grateful to airlines. They handle the whole thing. I just show up and get on the plane. I prefer not going through that crazy security, which is insanity. It's just like ridiculous what they're doing there, but that's another story. But anyway, the whole thing, overall, when I look at the whole thing, I much prefer to go commercial, have somebody else handle all that. But you stand on stage as the motivational speaker, oh, fantasy this, and bring your bride up on stage. You know, he's a 55-year-old guy, his wife's 22 years old. You know, look at this, my wife. Everybody goes, ooh, you can have that too. Don't you want all this? It's like stimulates fantasy. And when things are not grounded to reality, when it's fantasy, it overstimulates dopamine levels. When you overstimulate dopamine levels, what happens is the receptor sites flatten out. And you have less and less receptor sites. And then life, normal life, just going for a walk is no longer exciting and beautiful. It has to be overstimulation to feel good. Well, that's called the downregulation of dopamine receptor sites, and that eventually leads to low testosterone. That eventually leads to lack of passion in our lives. So we go from a lot of passion to no passion, with the potential, by the way, that I mentioned in the beginning, is we're in the new age of enlightenment. There's a greater potential for everyone to fully feel. And what is passion but fully feeling? But what we do is we take dopamine stimulators that take us out of our authentic feelings and into artificial false feelings, illusions, fantasy. And in the world of fantasy, we overstimulate our brain so that our reality no longer gives us the stimulation it would normally give. So it's amazing. Like, we have this potential for greater passion, but we also have this potential for greater fantasy passion, which then downregulates, desensitizes our receptor sites, so we can't even experience our true potential, our growing potential to experience lasting passion. So what is it that stimulates the brain with all this extra stimulation? Immediate gratification. Everything today is you can get this, it's fast. I want to know what they're saying, I go right here, and I get my emails, oh, I got this, and I got to respond this. And all this information coming so quickly at us, which I think is a great thing, but we have to keep in mind, too much of it overstimulates our brain. Our brain can handle it, as much as the people who understand this say it's too much stimulation, we shouldn't do it. I think we can handle it, but we need to have an off switch. That's it. You just need to have some of it and stop. Some of it and stop. Some of it and stop. We have to shut it off for a while, then put it back on. It's proven that when you overstimulate the brain, then if you just understimulate the brain, then the receptor sites come back up. That's it. And, you know, the mystics have known this throughout history by going into deep meditation, relaxing the brain, going to a very, very quiet, delicate, relaxed place, very, very subtle, quiet. And I remember when I was learning meditation 40 years ago, and they would say you're going to go to subtler levels of thought. I didn't know what that meant. So I know that when I'm saying subtle levels of thought, for many people, it's just a word. But there's something called a thought, and then there's an observer of the thought. So to observe your thoughts is another experience. So you're noticing these thoughts keep arising in your mind, and they happen automatically. And then you realize that there's a flow all the time happening with a little space in between. A thought rises and falls. Another thought rises and falls. And when it rises and it falls, there's a gap in between the two thoughts. And your mind starts to relax into that space between the two thoughts. And you start to realize that within that space is you. So that's the sense of self. And the sense of self is always there. It never goes away. And these thoughts are rising from the sense of self. Then the thoughts are no longer just thoughts. Now you're getting to subtle thought, which is just a feeling, kind of intuitive feeling, a vague feeling. And when you get to that place of feeling, it's expansive. And you begin to feel an expansive state of awareness, like your awareness expands and expands and expands. And then you're like huge in your awareness. You feel a field of energy around you, and it's expanding out. And it's always expanding out. And in that expanding awareness going out in all directions, these are all the different stages of meditation, then you begin to realize that that expanded awareness is you. And you just sort of become one with this space around you. And you are this unbounded, unlimited awareness. And from that unbounded, unlimited awareness, there is a source, like a spring of water coming forth. And there's this creativity of thought that flows, or feeling that flows, or abstract knowing. So you start from a place of a thought to a feeling, to kind of a knowing, and then to a light. And you begin to experience this light, and a feeling of oneness with light, and it's a visual experience as well, and a light feeling. So these are all different stages of meditation that one might go through. But they're all part of what the mystics have done for thousands and thousands of years, is they would take quiet time to listen inside, to have attention, observing inside. They didn't have TV to watch outside. They didn't have emails to watch outside. They didn't have great magical music all the time available, pumping into their ears to be stimulated and stimulated. Stimulation is great. Nothing wrong with it. But then we have to take time to relax and understimulate, to go inside. So there's a greater need today for things like meditation and relaxation and doing things slow. Like women going to yoga classes is so great. One of the things about yoga classes is yoga is now very different than it was when I taught yoga over 30 years ago. Or what was it, 20 years old I taught yoga. So it was 42 years ago I was a yoga teacher and taught yoga. I even when videotape had just come out, and I did a videotape that I sold for, actually I didn't sell it, but I did a videotape that was used in this organization that I was part of, the Transcendental Meditation Movement, to teach people yoga. I wish I could find that. If any of my listeners has a copy of that, I'd love to get a copy of me when I was 21 years old teaching yoga. That was fun. But the point being here is that this has been around a long time, the wisdom of going inside to balance going outside. And if we could recapture that in some way, it's very, very important. And for women, they do yoga today in for a different reason and purpose. Men would do it alone, whereas women do it in a group. So women in a group increases the hormone oxytocin. And anytime women are in harmony in a group, and going slow, kind of like the old-fashioned knitting circles that women used to have. And that would be something that would produce oxytocin. Also being in a yoga class, going slow. It's more powerful than being in an aerobics class, by the way. Aerobics class is still a lot of stimulation. Going slow, slowing down, and being in harmony with others, with some beautiful music, and it could be dance. So dance and aerobics, everybody's doing the same movement. That will also produce the oxytocin, but it doesn't calm the mind. So it's good to do the dance and aerobics. That has its own function and creates oxytocin because you're in harmony. But there's something about quieting the mind that allows the dopamine receptor sites to upregulate. So this is our talk on sex, love, and relationships. How does all this relate to that? Well, sex is something that happens when we don't have inhibited dopamine function. We need to have healthy dopamine function, and that's produced from a sense of newness. And so if you're in a marriage, if you're not going on dates together, experiencing new things together, and it doesn't always have to be together, by the way, doing new things, but also doing things together which are new and different and new stimulation, it awakens a new part of you. And then you come back and you relax together. And that's sex. Sex can be this very relaxing experience of him giving her a foot massage, him doing little things, slow, easy massage, touching, cuddling, affection, kissing, letting it start really slow, and then letting it build up in this big passionate thing is a real good balance to maintain healthy dopamine function. It can upregulate the dopamine receptor sites. And then you have the climax, you get big stimulation, which will then downregulate the receptor sites, and it's time to rest and go to sleep, and cuddle a while and go to sleep. It's like an amazing rejuvenator of these dopamine receptor sites, which are being downregulated due to our very busy lives. We need this calming presence to occur. However, there are many obstacles to that. So just as sex is important for relationships, love is the foundation of relationships, nutrition, which is often the theme of Tuesday, I want to bring that in, is just as important. And without the right nutrition, we can't rebuild those receptor sites. Okay, so the receptor sites downregulate. It means you actually have less receptor sites. Just using cocaine once, they measure the brain and the receptor sites in this part of the brain that lights up when people take cocaine or when they fall in love. And what they know, they haven't done a huge amount of research. I can just report what I've heard, which is that 30% of your receptor sites are wiped out after using cocaine once. And after 4 weeks of not using cocaine, 1% of that grows back. They don't know if it all grows back. You can ask a heroin addict, I don't know if it's with cocaine as well, but with a heroin addict, they'll say that the first one is always the best. I think that's true of cocaine too, I've heard. The first one is always the best, and they never recapture that. That's because you have all these plenty of receptor sites. You just overstimulated them, and your body goes, too much stimulation, get rid of a few of them, get rid of more, get rid of more. They grow back. The idea is to let them all grow back. And meditation can help that to occur. But even in the process of relaxing the brain, relaxing your life, doing things that are relaxing to alternate the stimulation. Also, we need the nutrition to rebuild those receptor sites. Now, chromium is a supplement that you can buy, and you can take high doses of chromium. Now, high doses may not even be high doses, but a long time ago, 8 years ago, I guess it was, 8 or 9 years ago, the government declared that their dosage of what people required was way wrong. Every 10 years, they're always going to see that they were wrong. Just to keep that in mind. The government doesn't know what they're talking about in most cases. In some cases, they may be protecting us from some bad things, but rarely when it comes to the health industry, they really don't know. It's all completely governed by the drug industry. Anything that works, let's try to get rid of it, or at least say that nobody can take it unless a doctor prescribes it. And that is a law, by the way. There's this one form of medicine which is called homeopathic. The American Medical Association calls it quackery, but it is legal because it's proven to work. And homeopathy, you'll see a lot of products in the drugstore, for example. 𝗲𝘃𝗵 is something for colds. And how can they say this can work for colds? Because it's a drug. And how do they get away saying it can work for colds? Because they haven't done all the $200 million worth of testing to say it's a drug for a particular reason, as a cure. They say it's a homeopathic remedy. So they dilute it down. And that makes it homeopathic. And with homeopathy, you don't have to do all that testing. And the reason you don't have to do all that testing is because there are no negative side effects of homeopathy. So they call it homeopathy. And at every age, at every stage of development, we grow in our ability to be more and more selfless until we're free of the ego, free of the self, and that we're able to experience the pleasure of complete selflessness, and then be able to integrate back into our awareness and being selfless, how to also support ourselves. And that's part of all, these are all part of our spiritual journey here, a whole series of spiritual lessons. But as we're embarking on this to be able to sustain our feelings, be able to stay in touch with our feelings, we can keep that passion alive. But when we don't have a positive way to understand the differences between men and women, then we start feeling our toes are being stepped on. We start suppressing ourselves, holding back ourselves, trying to be happy, and we go numb. One of my friends, 𝗲𝗵𝗆𝗆, has a whole parenting course, and the theme of her message, you can do 𝗲𝗵𝗆𝗆, great parenting coach online. You can go 𝗲𝗆𝗆, 𝗲𝗵𝗆𝗆. She uses the 𝗲𝗆𝗆 method for helping to take away negative beliefs, but also to help parents be better parents. One of the main themes is communicate with the awareness of how is the child going to feel, how is the child going to hear this, how is this going to affect the child. That awareness is something we have to grow in, and that's what you, in this question, you want to grow in the awareness of, when I say this, how's it going to sound to that other person? And you have to take into consideration gender intelligence, which is when I say this, how would it sound to a woman, and how would it sound to a man? And how's it going to sound to the man who's doing his very best to try to make me happy? I remember once one of my daughters said about her husband, she said, I listened to your talk, Dad, and I realized that I'm giving my husband such a hard time, and he's doing everything he can to make our life better, and he's not perfect, but look what all he does. Nobody's perfect. And he's trying to make me happy, and I just slam him. I realized, whoa, I should back off from that. It was so sweet of her to realize that. And that's a great insight a woman can have about a man. When you look at really what's the intent behind what he says and does. Intent is so important, because we lose awareness of what somebody's intent is. What they say or do can hurt us so much more. If we're dancing together and somebody steps on our foot, we go, oh, ow. And the person says, oh, excuse me. But if we think the person intended to step on our foot, then it's, ow! How could you do that to me? I can't believe it. You keep hurting me like that. You don't love me. You don't care about me. You treat me like garbage, like I'm not important. Everybody else is more important than me. How can you do that? Suddenly, when we don't realize and become aware, can't interpret the loving intent behind our partner's behavior, everything they say or do activates us more. And what you have to know in terms of being yourself, woman, let me roar kind of a thing, all negative emotions are defensive and attacking. They're blaming, and blame is interpreted as attack by men. That's what an attack is. You failed. You're not enough. You didn't succeed. So you have to soften this. Men are amazing. They can handle it, but you also have to have a partnership of consideration and caring. If you want him to be considerate, you be considerate, be authentic, but share your feelings at the right time, in the right way, and not for too long, because that's how much time is a real key thing, and when to do it. Not when he wants to pull away and be in his cave and be alone. We need to talk. Not when he's trying to sleep at night. We need to talk. Find a time when you're awake and you're open. He's out of the cave. And then often women say, well, if he's awake and he's open and he's loving, we don't need to talk. So, all right, we're going to go on here. So I get frustrated that my boyfriend isn't able to hold all my emotions. He shouldn't be able to, just some of them. Okay, so go to reality here and not some fantasy. And when you're on stage, you can go, oh, you should be able to hold those feelings. I could see myself saying it sometimes. But after done this, I can hear how people misinterpret that. You have to bring it back into reality. It's not just man be perfect and woman go crazy. It doesn't work that way. But I will say there's times when my wife has just exploded and I had the good sense to keep my mouth shut. That's like the guy being hung up. Just keep your mouth shut, yeah, and don't say anything. And that's really, really important skill for a guy to do. But if you have too many of those explosions that don't get resolved with a lot of, I appreciate your patience, I know that must have been hard for you, and a lot of love afterwards and so forth. That's the kind of thing. A guy has 2 or 3 of those upsets, and he's like, this woman's crazy. She doesn't make sense. I can't deal with her. I don't want to be in this relationship. And he can start to close down and pull away, and you lose him. How do I, as a woman, feel like he's going to be able to handle all of me if I can't share all of me? Well, you got the answer to that one. A piece at a time. Is that emasculating him in some way? Absolutely. Giving men messages that they failed you is emasculating him. And then just disregarding him and not what he feels is emasculating him. It's like way you make to support a man's masculinity is to acknowledge his efforts, his good intent, to appreciate those actions, and he doesn't have to be perfect, nor do you in that process. But at least we have to know what our ideals are. And the ideal isn't for you to be able to share all of you anytime, any place, and whatever you feel. That is the most unideal thing. That's like in the 60s, we had encounter groups where people would do that. And then they go home and do that and destroy their lives. And that's back in the 60s when divorce started going crazy. But also that was part of a global consciousness shift in 1968, around that time, 1969 to 75. A huge shift where people became much more aware of their feelings. And right now we just went through another one of those huge shifts. And how do I say that? I'm not a prophet. I'm not a psychic. I'm talking about my own experience. I experienced that, and I experienced it in the other people around me. I saw it, and I see it again. This new shift, I haven't seen as much around me, but boy, have I noticed it inside myself. And what I've noticed in my own life, when I go through big shifts, I see it around me as well. Because we're all connected, and in that way. Okay, so is that emasculating him in some way? Yes. Does this make sense? I hope. Yes. I've been disappointed, and like my boyfriend just writes me off as an over-emotional. Yes, he's going to. From his perspective, if you step on him, he'll step on you back. That's the defensive part of the brain, unfortunately. When my moods fluctuate like the ocean, as you described. Yes. The moods can go up and down, and a man can enjoy that if he feels confident that he can deal with it. So you have to help him in that process, and he has to help you in the process of feeling safer and safer to share who you are. But it's a gradual process. Don't expect perfection right away, and all the other tips I gave you. I love this question. I think it was really great. I appreciate you for it. P.S. I feel like Tony's stuff about men learning how to handle the feminine storm would be complemented by the depth of how to communicate information you provide. I've been feeling like my boyfriend is failing me and not masculine enough to handle me because he can't handle all of me. It's really, you had the answer right there. I just could reinforce it for you. That's correct. So he's not really failing you. He's doing his best, and nobody could actually, it's not even appropriate to be able to feel calm and cool, collected while somebody is just dumping on you. And so you're getting a good feedback there. And by correcting it this time, he'll stop thinking of your emotions as a negative and realize that her increased capacity to feel emotion compared to a man is a positive. Because just as it can swing in waves of upset, it can also swing in waves of pleasure and delight. And that's why we love to be around women. Their ability to love is so much greater on a feeling level. Their sensitivities are so much greater that a man can do little things and it can make a woman happy. But a man can disappoint women in little ways, and her feelings of disappointment will be much greater. John, thank you for being in America. Thank you for being a citizen. Hi, John. My husband's broken up with me after 10 months. Please help. Want him to come back home. Okay, so as you're reading my book, you underline all the mistakes that you have made and write him a letter and acknowledge these are mistakes that I've made. And I love you so much, and I feel so bad about making these mistakes. I realize I didn't give you what you deserved, and I want to make it up to you, and I want to have another chance, and I hope you'll give me another chance, because I love you so much, and I trust that we can make a relationship better, but it won't be based on me trying to change you. It's to have your help to help change me. Kabang, that will open most men's heart, and do that several times and practice it, and you may be able to win this person back. Taking responsibility for our mistakes helps to give hope. And when we have hope, our hearts can open and we can start to feel the love. I did a show last week, this last week I think it was, Love Never Dies. We just lose hope. And new information and new insight gives us hope. And then love can flow again, and we can then grow in our love. I love my boyfriend. He loves me, but his ex-girlfriend is a stalker for him and wants to fight all the time. I think the word is stoker or stalker. I'm not sure. Hi, John. I just want to ask, how can I get my boyfriend open to me again after we broke up, as he told me he still loves me? Okay, well, I'll go back to the one whose girlfriend is a stalker. Challenging situation, you have this other person in your life that you want to get rid of. And don't drop to her level. That's the whole key. Your boyfriend will be more drawn to you because you're the one who takes the higher ground. And your boyfriend will do things. Don't be particularly focused on appreciating and accepting your boyfriend where he is today. And the other girlfriend will get madder and madder that you're being so good and lose control. And your boyfriend will realize she's not the one who really loves him, but you are. It all comes to how you control your responses, to keep finding the positive, forgiving responses and positive responses at this time. And your boyfriend will feel valued and appreciated by you, and this other lady will gradually go out of his awareness. But that's for him to do. The more you get involved in trying to make her wrong and bad, the worse you will look to your boyfriend. So that's one approach that I've seen work for my clients. Okay, now back to 𝗲𝘃. I just want to ask how I can get my boyfriend to open up again after we broke up. As I told you, he still loves me. Well, the advice I just gave about writing the letter and sharing the ideas of your mistakes, and I know your boyfriend is still seeing you as friends, and what I suggest there is that you not see him so much as friends, but just be busy in your life, and don't sort of be casual and available to him as you were before. He has to earn that right. And as a friend, give him some of your time, but have many other friends. And so that creates a sense of separation. And he might think, are you not loving him? But keep giving the messages that, I'm learning so much about my relationships and how I hurt you that I'm so glad I can move on and have a better relationship. And I appreciate you giving the feedback of how I made mistakes in our relationship. And then don't spend a lot of time with him. Make him feel like he misses you. And then he might discover he really wants to be with you in a different kind of love, which is that love for an intimate relationship. Again, I think he got spooked, as I told you before. Well, a good question for anxiety. John, do you think chromium would help with anxiety? If not, what else would be helpful? Well, the super minerals help with anxiety. Chromium may not be the main thing, except chromium will help with insulin resistance. If your body has high blood sugar, it causes anxiety. Okay, so high blood sugar for many people will cause anxiety. Back in the days, 30 years ago, when I experienced anxiety, huge anxiety, I noticed that I had any sugar drinks, soft drinks, fruit juice, any type of sugar would feed that anxiety to a much higher level. Now I know it was just high blood sugar inhibits the functioning of the brain. And so your brain couldn't make enough serotonin to calm the limbic system. So some supplements would be the super minerals plus some lithium orotate, like 2 super minerals twice a day and 2 lithium orotates twice a day is really good for anxiety. Along with, now that could do it completely. If it doesn't, then get some 5-HTP and take 50 milligrams twice a day or 100 milligrams twice a day. You can experiment it. That should do it. And if that doesn't do it, keep doing all those things and add to it an herb, which is called L-theanine. L-theanine or ashwagandha, either one of those. But L-theanine will also bring in a good 300 milligrams twice a day of L-theanine will be the icing on the cake, and anxiety should be gone. Okay, and you only have to do that for a period of time and gradually start lessening them. In the order I added them on, you start taking them off until you're back to normal again. And then you're just doing 2 super minerals a day, maybe an extra lithium orotate a day, and your superfood shake. Now you got to get the superfood shake to give you the amino acids, and those other things are all the extras that you do on top of it. If that doesn't work, then it can also be a more serious condition of a concussion that affected you. And when the concussion affects you, the supplements aren't going to do the trick fully. And that's when you need some homeopathic remedies to take away inflammation in your brain. But I try the supplements first, and if it doesn't work, then continue with the supplements and then take a homeopathic remedy program from 𝗲𝘃𝗍𝑒𝗓𝑚𝑒Wonders.com. They have a treatment for concussion I did 10 years ago that literally, I had already taken away my anxiety, but it made my brain work so much better. And clarity. Thanks everybody for being a part of the show today. We went a bit over time. I had the time. Thank you so much, and we'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll talk about sex, relationships, dating, passion, and whatever other questions you have. Today's talk is sex, love, and relationships, and how the nutrition to sustain that. See you tomorrow. Make sure to tell your friends all about the show. Thank you.
Now, I've been doing this 40 years. I'm 64 years old. So this is my life work. I've watched the change. And when men come to me and they want a divorce, they all say basically one thing. When women come and they want a divorce, they all have a long list of problems. This. Very complicated. He doesn't talk. He doesn't listen. He doesn't kiss me. He doesn't compliment. He doesn't hold. He doesn't hug me. He never brings me roses. He always arguing. He drinking too much. He working too hard. He not sleeping enough. He's sleeping too much. All kinds of things. And then, when I talk a little bit, they have one complaint. What is that complaint? We say, no matter what I do, she's never happy.
Premieră absolută. John Gray vine la tine acasă. Înregistrarea conferinței susținute de John Gray în București plus ore de conținut video cu subiecte importante sunt disponibile acum online pe www.life-university.ro.
Hi, I'm Dr. John Gray, the author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, a #1 bestseller in the whole world. It is done an amazing job helping men and women communicate better. It's in over 143 countries and over 50 languages and 50 million copies sold. One is that you will get all new content on understanding how men and women unknowingly sabotage their relationships at home and the workplace. This is the dynamic we're going to be looking at. We're going to look at how men and women manage stress effectively in different ways, and we have to know how to do it for ourselves, so we're not blaming our partners. We can take blame out of our lives, out of our relationships, and learn to be responsible, but also when we're not getting what we need from our partners, how to communicate that in a non-stressful way, but in a way that will elicit response. We get in a relationship in order to support each other, so you'll learn those skills.
When a woman marries a man, in the beginning, he comes home, and she's home already. If he comes home, the first thing he does is he finds her. Oh, where are you? And she goes, oh, he left me. He left me. And then she begins testing a little. Does he still love me? So he comes home, she hides. She's like, I'm so excited. Is he going to find me? But after 1, 2, 3 years, the newness goes away. And when the newness goes away, less dopamine, less testosterone. So instead, men play another game on Mars. When they come home, they look, and the man goes and hides. He doesn't want any foul. He's like, okay, don't find me. And this makes no sense to women. Now let's go on.
I had such a great time when I was in Bucharest. It was a great day, a terrific event. We all need more love in our lives, and sometimes just making a few changes can make a huge difference.
Disponibil acum pe life-university.ro.